How does the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill relate to the debt ceiling? Now remember, the reconciliation bill is the one where we would expect them to add a fourth stimulus check as well as reforming programs like SSI to raise benefits and help out beneficiaries, as well as so many other stimulus programs and provisions within that bill. The next question being, is the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill in jeopardy as a result of all of this debt ceiling business going on right now? Well, that's what we want to talk about in this video. Let's get right into it. But welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new here or if you haven't done so yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right down below the video, as I am back every single day as your daily advocate to keep you updated and to do anything we possibly can to continue reaching out to Congress to remind them that we need immediate relief right now in the form of stimulus checks and permanent raises to benefits like Social Security, SSDI, SSI, VA, RRB, and ultimately more relief for lower income and fixed income beneficiaries. So if you like the sound of that, make sure to subscribe right down below the video. Feel free to go back and check out any other videos right here on the channel. It's totally free to watch all of my videos and totally free to subscribe. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let's talk through this a little bit further. Now, first off, this is actually somewhat of a very confusing topic. I've had a number of people reaching out to me over the last couple weeks here saying, what's going on with this debt ceiling thing? I don't understand it. I don't even know what it means, but can you help us out? Can you explain it a little bit and let us know what this actually means? Is it going to potentially jeopardize the $3.5 trillion stimulus package? That is what we need to get through right now. What's going on with all this? So let me try to lay this out in such a way that actually makes sense. I totally agree with you. It's a confusing topic. I've actually done a bunch of research on this to better understand it myself. I did have a kind of a general understanding of the whole debt ceiling thing, but honestly, I didn't understand it initially up until a few weeks ago. I didn't really understand it all that much, but I've done more research on it and I feel like I have a pretty good understanding now. So let me kind of talk you through this, and I'll promise you I'll lay this out kind of relatively simply because you don't need to know all the details. We don't need to get into all the intricate details of everything here, but let's kind of lay this out. So first off, one question being, is it going to jeopardize, is this whole debt ceiling talk and everything like that going to potentially jeopardize this $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill and potentially all of the other stimulus provisions within it, like potentially even those fourth stimulus checks that are supported by 53 members out of the House of Representatives, 21 senators, again, out of the Senate who are supporting a $2,000 stimulus check, 7 members out of the House Ways and Means Committee, again, supporting additional stimulus checks and stabilizers. You know, there's a lot of people, over 80 people throughout Congress right now, who are in support of additional stimulus checks, $2,000 stimulus checks, plus monthly recurring payments. Not only that, we have a big group of people, senators mostly, who are in support of reforming the SSI program through the SSI Restoration Act, which they also want to implement and put into the reconciliation bill. Now, we've talked about this a number of times here on the channel in various different videos. This SSI Restoration Act, it would be massive. I mean, seriously, it would be so influential and so impactful for a lot of people. I mean, millions upon millions of people who receive SSI benefits on an ongoing monthly basis. That's a good one. So we certainly want to keep an eye on that one, because if it's not in the, if the reconciliation bill gets hung up on something, then all of these other programs and provisions potentially get hung up as well. So the real question being, do we need to worry about the reconciliation bill with this whole debt ceiling thing? I would say probably not really, okay? I really wouldn't worry about it simply because the reconciliation bill and this debt ceiling, they're running on two separate tracks. Even though they are related, I mean, they're both absolutely related, they're kind of running down two separate tracks right now. Like they're two separate trains running down tracks that are kind of parallel to each other. However, as far as the debt ceiling thing goes, let's kind of talk about that for a minute, because it's kind of a confusing topic, but it's been around quite a bit lately, and we kind of want to better understand what does this mean going forward, and why has it come up so much lately. Let me lay this out a little bit simply, and then I'll have Corey come in just a few minutes here, and she'll read an article to you that I think will kind of sum everything up. So the debt ceiling is essentially something they established to figure out how much money that the federal government can borrow based on what they've decided. So the debt limit was actually established back in 2019, the last time it was established. 2019, they locked it up for 2 years, and they said that the federal government can borrow $22 trillion. Well, currently, the national debt is 28.5 or thereabouts dollars right now, $28.5 trillion. Literally every second that I spend talking about this, it's racking up even more and more, so it's about that, right? But either way, about $28.5 trillion is what we're currently sitting at. So essentially, this suspension on the debt ceiling wrapped up or ended the end of July. So now we're into this phase right now where we're just kind of floating along. Essentially, they need to get something done as far as they need to raise the debt limit. Otherwise, the federal government could potentially default. In other words, can't pay our bills. That's basically what it comes down to. The federal government is broke and they don't have any money and they need to pay the bills and they need to raise the debt ceiling. Now, here's the thing. Technically, we're in this phase right now where something really badly kind of needs to be done. But since nothing is being done currently about this, the Treasury, as of a few weeks ago, well, actually about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago now, has actually deployed some emergency measures to actually start getting cash out and kind of shoring things up right now so that the federal government doesn't default. But this is only going to go on until about October time. And then it's like we need to have a permanent solution by the time October comes around. Otherwise, we could be facing potentially government shutdowns at that point. Now, we've all gone through government shutdowns. We know what that means. We've seen it. You're not going to get mail. Government entities, the post office is shut down. Government centers are shut down. Government employees are, temporary furloughed, things like this. We've seen this before. We've gone through government shutdowns in the past. Sometimes they keep different branches open based on the amount of the government shutdown, as in like how widespread is it. But ultimately, they do leave some branches of government open, but sometimes they just kind of close everything for the most part down, right? But for the most part, going forward, is this something we really need to worry about? Well, we've seen this play out many, many times, okay? Basically what happens is Congress will wait until literally the last minute, as they always do. They wait until the very last minute, and then they will pass something like a stopgap bill like they did, I think, like 3 or 4 times last year. Remember that? Oh man, it's all coming back to me now. Last year in October, they passed I think it was 3 different stopgap bills, which essentially kept the government funded for 2 days so that they could get a permanent solution in place. Well, guess what? They didn't do it, so they had to pass another 2-day stopgap bill until they got a permanent solution in place. They did that multiple times last year. So I would imagine the same thing is going to happen again this year. October is going to roll around, and all of a sudden they're all going to come out and be like, oh, I guess we should figure something out now, right? And then they'll start working on it, and then they need to pass all these stopgap bills to avoid a government shutdown and all this business going forward. So that's ultimately what will happen. They continue to raise the debt limit every time. They do it every single time. There's never a time there's probably a time that they've come back and said, we're not raising it or, whatever. But for the most part, they come back and they raise the debt ceiling, and then we all live on happily ever after, and life is good again. It's no problem. And they extend it out for many, many years or, a couple years or whatever happens with it. And I imagine that's going to be the same thing that'll happen once again. But when it comes to the reconciliation bill, do we need to be worried about it? Probably not, okay? It's still going to be working through the process of getting this whole thing passed. Realistically, the reconciliation bill is going to probably be still in the process of working its way through all of the amendments, as in the negotiations, the debate phase going through this whole thing. They're probably going to be within all of these phases by the time that they're still working on extending out the debt ceiling. So, by the time the debt ceiling is extended, the reconciliation bill, who knows what's going to be happening with it at that point. Maybe they'll get it done before then. Maybe they won't. At the pace that they're getting things done right now, we would have to anticipate, it's probably going to be a little while anyway, right? So either way, but you never know. They could come back. There's actually been talk of them coming back at some point later in August, potentially sometime in September, before they're technically supposed to come back from their recess and actually get things done and vote on it. So, who knows what? There's so many different stories going on right now as far as when it could actually be passed, when they may actually come back and vote on the thing. It's almost like nobody really even knows at this point. But either way, they are still in session as we speak, right here, right now. They are still in session. I know a lot of people said that they left. No, they did not leave. The Senate is still there. They are still working as we speak, right here, right now. But yeah, we'll have to see what goes on with that. But as far as the debt ceiling, as far as this reconciliation bill goes, I just honestly, I wouldn't really get all worried about it. I know a lot of people have been reaching out to me. Well, I shouldn't really say a lot. I've had a number of people reaching out to me, not a ton, but not, an insignificant number either, of people reaching out to me saying, I don't really get it, but can you explain it a little bit? So I hope this kind of wraps it up. Essentially, they just need to allocate more money to be spent by the federal government. Is basically all it comes down to. They need to just come forward and approve more money to be spent. They basically need to say that it is okay that the federal government goes into even more debt, is pretty much what they're saying. So that's kind of what we're talking about. So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to bring Corey in. She's going to read an article to you, and then hopefully this will kind of sum up everything we've talked about in this video. And then I'll see you in the next one. I'm not going to see you at the end of this video. I'm just going to let Corey wrap it up from here. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Subscribe down below. Corey, take it away, and I'll see you again in the next video. I'll see you later.
This is an article from Bloomberg titled U.S. Debt Ceiling Suspension Ends, Congress Unclear on Next Step by Katya Dimitrieva. The U.S. debt ceiling officially became operative again on Sunday after a 2-year suspension, with lawmakers in Washington yet to outline how they'll avoid a potential default later this year. The debt limit, the total amount that the federal government is authorized to borrow, was set at $22 trillion in 2019. It will be adjusted to the current level of debt, which has risen to $28.5 trillion as of the end of June, when the suspension ends, putting pressure on Congress to find a solution that will allow the government to keep borrowing. This is the day that the clock starts ticking, said David Wilcox, senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. It's the day that really begins to capture the attention of lawmakers to let them know that they need to come to the bargaining table. It's a little bit like the starter's gun at a 200-meter dash. The debt cap was paused for 2 years in August 2019 as part of a budget deal in Congress. Democrats, with slim majority in both chambers, have yet to outline a plan to either increase the limit or suspend it again. Without action, the U.S. is on a path to default as early as October. That outcome has been avoided in debt ceiling crises since the 1980s, although the federal government has sometimes been forced to shut down until a deal could be reached. The Treasury Department already started taking special measures on Friday to shore up cash. At noon that day, officials stopped selling state and local government series securities, which help local authorities to invest bond proceeds. Other options for the Treasury include suspending new investment in funds for retired public sector workers. Before leaving for the August recess, Democrats last week said they would address the debt ceiling problem without giving details. House Budget Committee Chairman John Yarmuth and Senator Dick Durbin, the number 2 Democratic leader in the upper chamber, said there's no concrete plan to approach the debt ceiling through budget reconciliation. That would bypass Republicans, but leave President Joe Biden's party with sole ownership of a potentially unpopular move. Other alternatives include negotiations with Republicans to increase the ceiling in return for agreeing to some of their favored budget items, or tying a rise in the ceiling to other bills that need to pass.